You bought blueberries this week. Maybe you've been buying them every week for years. You've heard the word superfood so many times it no longer registers. You believe you're doing something right. But here's the problem. A significant portion of what most people over 60 do with this fruit, how they store it, wash it, eat it, pair it, is actively canceling out every benefit. Some of it is doing quiet harm. Today, we fix that. 6 mistakes, 6 clear corrections, starting right now. I've spent over 2 decades working closely with patients over 60 on nutrition, cognition, and the kind of slow building damage that doesn't show up until it's serious. Blueberries come up in almost every conversation about brain health and inflammation. And almost every time I find the same errors, not because people are careless, but because nobody explained the biochemistry. The gap between blueberries are good for you, and here's precisely how to make that true for a body over 60, is wider than most people realize. And that gap is where the mistakes live. This video closes it. 6 mistakes, all of them common, all of them correctable. By the end, you'll know precisely what to do differently, starting tonight. Let's begin with what I call the most convincing trap in the supermarket. Blueberry flavored yogurt. The ones in the small cups, already mixed, sitting in the dairy aisle looking perfectly reasonable. Many of my patients pick these up thinking protein, fruit, done. A sensible breakfast. Here's what's actually in the cup. Most commercial blueberry yogurt products contain less than 2% real fruit. The blue color comes from dyes, the texture comes from modified starch and thickeners. And the sweetness, that's where the real problem lives. Many of these products contain between 15 and 20 grams of added sugar per serving, primarily from high fructose corn syrup. Think about what that sugar does to the body after 60. Muscle mass naturally decreases with age, a process called sarcopenia. Muscle tissue is the primary site where blood sugar gets absorbed and cleared. When you have less of it and you introduce a concentrated sugar load first thing in the morning, the insulin response is sharper, the clearance is slower, and the liver converts that excess energy directly into visceral fat. That's the fat that accumulates around your internal organs. It doesn't just sit there, it actively drives systemic inflammation, the same inflammation that damages blood vessels and accelerates cognitive aging. You are not eating blueberries, you are eating a dessert that has borrowed the name. The fix is straightforward. Buy plain, unsweetened Greek yogurt or kefir. Both provide genuine protein for muscle maintenance. Then add your own whole blueberries, fresh or frozen. That combination gives you the fiber, the antioxidants, and the protein, without the synthetic additives or the insulin spike. This one swap costs the same amount of money. It takes 30 extra seconds. And the difference to your metabolism is not small. Now let's talk about something most people assume they're already handling correctly. You rinse your blueberries under the tap. That's what everyone does. That's enough, right? It isn't. And the reason matters more after 60 than at any other point in your life. Blueberries consistently appear on the Environmental Working Group's annual Dirty Dozen list, produce items with the highest detected pesticide residues. The pesticides commonly used in conventional blueberry cultivation include organophosphates and certain fungicides that are specifically engineered to be water resistant. They are designed to stay on the plant through rain. Running tap water over them for 10 seconds does not remove them. Here's why this is a different conversation for older adults. The blood-brain barrier, the cellular filter that separates your bloodstream from your brain tissue, naturally becomes more permeable with age. Compounds that a younger, more robust barrier would block have easier access to neural tissue. As we get older, organophosphate residues are classified as neurotoxic. Chronic low-level exposure is associated with neuroinflammation and has been linked in research to cognitive decline over time. If you're eating blueberries to protect your brain, and the berries are carrying neurotoxic residues directly into a more permeable barrier, the math is working against you. The solution comes from a study published by researchers at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which compared plain water, bleach solution, and a baking soda wash on produce contamination. The baking soda solution, 1 teaspoon dissolved in 2 cups of water, outperformed both alternatives in removing surface pesticide residues. The alkaline environment breaks down pesticide molecules and disrupts the waxy coating that makes them adhere. The protocol: when you're ready to eat, fill a bowl with 2 cups of cold water and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Soak your blueberries for 15 minutes, rinse thoroughly, pat dry. That's it. Do not wash them before storage. Moisture accelerates decay. Only wash immediately before eating. And if you are eating conventional blueberries regularly, meaning non-organic, this step is not optional. It is the minimum protective measure available to you for surface residues. It takes 15 minutes of passive soaking time. The cost is a small amount of baking soda. Given what the alternative allows into your system, that trade is not even a close call. Here is a mistake that surprises nearly everyone I mention it to. Have you ever squeezed the white flesh out of a blueberry and noticed it has almost no color? That's not an accident. That's a nutritional map. Think of the blueberry like a building with its structural load concentrated entirely in the outer walls. Remove the walls, and what remains is empty space. That's the biology, and it changes everything about how you consume this fruit. The compounds responsible for virtually every documented health benefit of blueberries: reduced inflammation, improved circulation to the retina, protection against oxidative stress in brain tissue, are called anthocyanins. They are concentrated almost exclusively in the skin. The deep blue-purple pigment is not cosmetic, it is the medicine. The white interior contains water, fructose, and trace vitamins. Useful, but not what you're reaching for when you eat this fruit for your health. This becomes critical when we talk about popular blueberry products: blueberry juice, blueberry muffins, blueberry jam. In most of these products, the skin has been removed, pulverized beyond recognition, or exposed to heat long enough to degrade the anthocyanin structure. The retina deserves particular attention here. It is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the human body, consuming oxygen at a rate that produces significant oxidative waste. The anthocyanins in blueberry skin have a documented biological affinity for ocular tissue. They improve microcirculation in the capillaries that supply the macula, and they support the regeneration of rhodopsin, the photopigment essential for low-light vision. Research published in nutrients and ophthalmology journals has consistently shown these effects. When you drink pasteurized blueberry juice for your vision, and the processing has removed or degraded the skin compounds, you are missing the target entirely. Eat them whole, raw, with the skin intact. If you use frozen berries, which are often frozen at peak ripeness and nutritionally comparable to fresh, thaw them in the refrigerator, not in the microwave. The oscillating heat of microwave thawing degrades phytonutrients at a cellular level. Cold, slow thawing preserves them. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Dorothy. 73, retired school teacher, sharp and disciplined about her health. She had been drinking a glass of blueberry juice every morning for 2 years specifically because she was worried about her eyesight. Her ophthalmologist had mentioned macular health at her last visit, and she had taken that seriously. When she came to me, she was frustrated. Her vision wasn't improving. She was doing everything right, wasn't she? When I asked about the juice, I explained what happens to anthocyanins during pasteurization. The skin compounds that protect the retina don't survive the processing. She had been consuming blueberry-flavored sugar water every morning for 2 years. With complete sincerity, she switched to a half cup of frozen wild blueberries, eaten whole, each morning. 6 months later, she told me, "I wish someone had explained the difference between the label and what's actually in the bottle." That sentence stays with me. Does this sound familiar? Have you been relying on juice or processed products thinking you were getting the full benefit? If the answer is yes, the next section explains exactly why it hasn't been working. This next mistake comes from a good place, and that's exactly why it's easy to miss. Do you ever sit down with a large bowl of blueberries as a snack, 2 cups maybe more, guilt-free because it's fruit? After 60, the digestive system operates on a narrower margin. Gastric emptying slows, enzyme production decreases, the small intestine's capacity to absorb fructose, the sugar in fruit, has a ceiling. When you exceed that ceiling in one sitting, the unabsorbed sugar travels to the colon, where bacteria ferment it rapidly. The result is gas, bloating, cramping, and unpredictable bowel patterns. I have had patients who spent months convinced they had developed irritable bowel syndrome, only to discover the cause was their daily oversized fruit bowl. Beyond digestion, there is a metabolic dimension. Blueberries have a relatively low glycemic index compared to many fruits, but that does not mean they are consequence-free at high volumes. 100 grams or more in a single sitting creates a meaningful glycemic load, particularly significant for anyone with pre-diabetic markers or insulin resistance, which is far more prevalent after 60 than most people realize. If that glycemic load arrives late in the evening, the resulting blood sugar spike and subsequent drop can trigger cortisol release in the early morning hours. Cortisol disrupts deep sleep architecture, and deep sleep is when the glymphatic system, the brain's own waste clearance mechanism, does its most important work, flushing out the metabolic byproducts associated with cognitive decline. Eating blueberries to protect your brain in a portion that disrupts the sleep your brain needs to clean itself is a circular problem worth solving. The protocol is simple. Half a cup per serving, that's roughly 75 grams. It provides the antioxidant benefit without overwhelming the gut or the pancreas. And never eat them alone. Pair them with a fat or a protein source, a small handful of walnuts or plain Greek yogurt. Fat and protein slow gastric emptying, which means the fruit sugar enters your bloodstream gradually rather than a spike. That sustained, steady release is far more beneficial for inflammation management than a large flood followed by a crash. Half a cup, paired, twice a day if you want, morning and afternoon, rather than one large serving at once. And one more thing about timing. Late evening is the worst window for a large fruit portion. The metabolic slowdown that happens naturally after sunset means your body handles that glycemic load with even less efficiency at 9 at night than it does at 9 in the morning. If you enjoy blueberries as part of your evening routine, keep it to a small amount, a quarter cup, and pair it with something fatty like a few walnuts. That pairing acts as a buffer. It slows everything down, it keeps insulin steady, and it keeps your sleep clean. I understand that budgets are real. I have this conversation with patients regularly, and I don't dismiss the financial dimension, but I want you to consider this differently for a moment. The washing protocol we discussed removes pesticide residues from the surface of the berry. What it cannot address is something more significant: systemic pesticides. In modern conventional agriculture, certain chemicals are not sprayed on the surface of the plant. They are applied to the soil or introduced into the plant's vascular system directly. These compounds are absorbed through the root system and distributed into the tissue of the fruit itself. They are inside the cells of the berry. No wash, however thorough, reaches them. For a younger body with a high-functioning liver and efficient kidneys, low-level systemic pesticide exposure may be metabolized without obvious immediate consequences. But the body after 60 is working with reduced detoxification capacity, the liver's phase 1 and phase 2 enzyme systems, the primary machinery for neutralizing these compounds, decline measurably with age, kidney clearance slows, and there is the concept of cumulative body burden. Over decades of life, the body has absorbed environmental toxins, heavy metals, and chemical exposures from dozens of sources. The system that handles this load is already carrying weight. Adding a daily supply of organophosphates and neonicotinoids from conventional produce adds to that cumulative burden at precisely the moment when the body's capacity to process it is lowest. These compounds are documented endocrine disruptors. They have been linked to neuroinflammation in peer-reviewed research. If you are eating blueberries for brain protection and the berries are carrying neuroinflammatory compounds, the benefit you are seeking is being partially offset by the vehicle delivering it. The practical solution, if fresh organic berries are outside your budget, is frozen organic wild blueberries. They are consistently less expensive than fresh organic. They are frozen at peak ripeness, which preserves nutritional content at levels comparable to fresh. And wild varieties, smaller, darker berries, have a higher skin-to-flesh ratio, which means a higher anthocyanin concentration per gram. You get more of what you're paying for. That is not an upsell. That is the arithmetic of getting actual value from what you buy. We've saved the most correctable mistake for last, and it may be the one costing you the most. How do you store your blueberries when you get home from the store? If the answer is I put the plastic container straight into the fridge, you are creating exactly the conditions that turn a healthy fruit into a hazard within 48 hours. Blueberries have no protective rind. Unlike citrus or apples, they have only a thin, fragile skin between the flesh and the environment. They're acutely sensitive to moisture. Inside a sealed plastic clamshell in a refrigerator, condensation accumulates. That moisture does not evaporate. It sits against the skin of every berry in the container. Fungal spores are present in nearly all produce environments. In a moist, enclosed space, those spores find the conditions they need. Visible mold, the white or gray fuzz on a berry, is not the beginning of the problem. It is a late-stage signal. By the time mold is visible on one berry, the mycelium, the root network of the fungus, has already threaded through the surrounding berries. The entire container is compromised, even where it looks clean. For older adults, this matters more than a straightforward food safety issue. As we age, the immune response becomes less precise, a process researchers call immunosenescence. The inflammatory response to mycotoxins, which are the compounds produced by mold, tends to be more pronounced and less efficiently resolved in older immune systems. Chronic low-level mycotoxin ingestion has been associated with fatigue, joint inflammation, and aggravation of autoimmune conditions. Beyond the mold risk, degrading berries rapidly lose their nutritional value, vitamin C oxidizes quickly, anthocyanin structure breaks down. The longer they sit in that damp environment, the more the therapeutic value you paid for disappears. The storage protocol takes 3 minutes when you get home. Remove every berry that is soft, leaking, or crushed. Those accelerate decay in everything around them. Do not wash the berries at this stage. Moisture is the enemy of storage. Take a shallow, wide container, container, glass works best, and line it with dry paper towels. Place the dry unwashed berries loosely in the container. Do not seal it airtight. Leave the lid slightly open or use a breathable cover. The paper towel wicks moisture away from the skin. The airflow prevents condensation buildup. Done correctly, this extends shelf life to 8 to 10 days and preserves anthocyanin integrity throughout. Wash them with the baking soda method only when you're ready to eat. That is the complete protocol. Simple, free. It takes less time than this paragraph took to read. Let me bring all 6 corrections together clearly so you leave with a precise plan and nothing left to figure out. For sourcing, choose organic, and if fresh organic is outside your budget, look for frozen organic wild blueberries, smaller berries, darker color, higher anthocyanin concentration, typically lower cost than fresh. For storage, when you get home, remove any damaged berries immediately. Place the unwashed berries on a paper towel lined glass container, loosely covered, not sealed. Refrigerate immediately. Do not wash until just before eating. For washing, fill a bowl with 2 cups of cold water and 1 level teaspoon of baking soda. Soak for 15 minutes. Rinse thoroughly under cool running water. Pat dry before eating. For portion, limit each serving to half a cup, approximately 75 grams. Pair with protein or fat, plain Greek yogurt, kefir, or a small handful of walnuts. If you want more, split it. A serving at breakfast and a serving in the afternoon. For preparation, eat them whole, raw, with the skin intact whenever possible. If using frozen, thaw in the refrigerator overnight. Never microwave to thaw. Avoid blueberry juice, jam, or heavily processed products if your primary goal is brain and eye health. For yogurt pairings, buy plain unsweetened Greek yogurt or kefir. Add your own fresh or frozen whole blueberries. Do not buy pre-mixed blueberry flavored yogurt cups. 6 changes. None of them require spending more money. Most of them save it. Here is what I want you to understand before you close this video. The blueberry is genuinely one of the most well-studied foods for brain health and cardiovascular protection in older adults. The research on anthocyanins, oxidative stress, and cognitive aging is real and growing. This isn't marketing. The biology is solid, but biology has conditions. It requires that the compounds actually reach your system intact. It requires that you're not simultaneously adding a toxic load that offsets the benefit. It requires that the portion doesn't create a secondary problem while solving the first. A 15-minute clinic appointment was never designed to cover this level of nutritional detail. That is simply the reality of how healthcare time gets allocated, which is why so many people who are genuinely trying, who buy the berries, who eat them regularly, who believe they are doing something protective, are still not getting the benefit they deserve. You are not eating incorrectly because you are careless. You are eating incorrectly because no one explained the gap between blueberries are healthy, and here's exactly how to make that true for a body over 60. Now you know the gap and you know how to close it. You walked into this video with a routine that had good intentions but incomplete information. You leave with the specific knowledge to make that routine actually work. That shift from general belief to precise practice is the difference between hoping a food helps you and knowing it does. Informed patients get better outcomes. That is not optimism. That is what the data consistently shows. One final thing, and I mean this genuinely. Everything in this video is general health education based on published research and my clinical experience. It is not personal medical advice. Your history, your medications, your specific situation require assessment by a doctor who knows you. Please bring what you've learned here to a real conversation with your own physician. That conversation is the whole point